Good evening to 40 Days Recap Session. We are recapping documented session number 145, which was done on May 17th, 2024. This was the session on the third woe with some time traveling and sand. It was the 11th installment in our Seven Bowls of Wrath series, and it started with a look at Revelation chapter 12. We did a point-by-point overview of Revelation 12. Let me see if I can get to that. Is this? No, this is 20. Sorry, I could not see part of my screen. It's to get to Revelation 12. So Revelation 12 covers a lot of time, and it seems to cover different parts of history. So if we look at it, it covers before Adam and Eve were tempted, which was before, like verse 4. His tail swept down a third of the stars of heaven and cast them to the earth, and the dragon stood before the woman. This sweeping down a third of the stars of heaven would have been the rebellion in heaven. And that was before Adam and Eve were tempted. And that's verse 4. We see angels rebelling there and them getting kicked out of heaven for Satan. Now notice there they were cast to the earth, a third of the stars, and cast them to the earth. The stars here are angels in heaven who the dragon's tail swept down. And they're cast to the earth. We know that happened after the world was created, before Adam and Eve were tempted, because there would have to have been an earth to cast them down to. And Satan was here to tempt them. This here is centuries before 4 BC. Let's get this. Why 4 BC? Because when we look here at verse 2, she was pregnant and crying out in birth pains and the agony of giving birth. This is referring to Jesus coming to earth, which would have been around 3 or 4 BC. Understand? So that verse 4 was covering like almost at the beginning of the earth's history. Then verse 2 is covering just before Jesus was born, the dragon waiting to devour the child. We know the child is Jesus. It covers approximately 4 BC to 29 AD in verse 5. Check it out. She gave birth to a male child. That's Jesus, who is to rule all the nations with a rod of iron, but her child was caught up to God and to his throne. So this is Jesus' birth and ascension to heaven. Yeah. It covers future war in heaven when Satan is totally kicked out, which would be in verse 7. Now, war arose in heaven, Michael and his angels fighting against the dragon, and the dragon and his angels fought back. It covers a future time when the wrath of the devil will be unleashed in verse 12. Come down here. Rejoice, O heavens, and you who dwell in them. But woe to you, O earth and sea, for the devil is come down to you in great wrath, because he knows that his time is short. So the devil is coming down. And that's in the future, our future. That devil is going to instruct his Antichrist agent to desecrate the temple and turn on Israel. He's going to manipulate people to get the Antichrist into power. Israel would be comfortable with the Antichrist up to a point because they'll sign on to his peace treaty. And he's going to be the one to bring peace to the Middle East. No, it's not Donald Trump, because Donald Trump did not sign any 7-year peace treaty yet. I say yet, in case he does. But it's unlikely to be him. All right? It covers a future time beyond that signing of the peace treaty in verse 13, where he's going to pursue the woman who had given birth to the male child. That pursuit is going to be during the tribulation time when the Antichrist, midpoint, says, I am God. And Israel will be upset that he desecrates the temple, and Israel will turn against him. And the woman will escape. We know that one because we spoke about that many times. Wings of the great eagle, she'll fly from the serpent, and the serpent will then become furious with the woman and make war on her offspring. We covered this in the last one where we said that offspring is us, the saved of God, and any Jewish people who have been converted, or any Jewish people randomly who are left, who have not gone to that safe haven wherever it is. It covers the unknown future date of the tribulation when Israel takes the wings and goes to safety, right? And that is verse 14, as we see it there. She's given two wings. It's also verse 6. Yeah, it's bouncing around time. If you check it out, the woman fled into the wilderness where she has a place prepared by God in which she has to be nourished for 1,260 days. So there's a bunch of bouncing around in time here. Before sin, sinful times, Jesus times, our future times. And of course, verse 17 again has future open persecution of the saints of God who are here on earth. If you analyze that, it covers the earliest time in history when the devil and his cohorts rebelled in heaven. It goes all the way to the Great Tribulation. It jumps ahead in verse 6. It follows chronological order through a lot of it. That's just what I'm pointing out. I'm not trying to make sense of it and tell you this is why it was bouncing around in time. No, no, no. It's providing an overview of time, the devil and his plans. That's all I can tell you. I don't know why exactly it bounced around in time. Now, at the end of verse 17, the ESV, which is on screen, tells of the red dragon standing on the seashore as the beast is about to rise. Now, hold on. How do I know it's a red dragon? Because, and he stood on the sand of the sea. So let's read all of 17. Then the dragon became furious with the woman and went off to make war on the rest of her offspring, on those who keep the commandments of God and holds to the testimony of Jesus. And he stood on the sand of the sea. You see a little C here, which says, some manuscripts said, and I stood. I want to point out, number one, it's the red dragon. The dragon is called red in verse 3, a great red dragon with 7 heads, 10 horns, and crowns. Okay? This translation makes it look like he stood on the sand of the sea, but they do tell us some manuscripts said, I stood. So what's the deal? If you look at this verse, let me show you some stuff here. Not 13:1, 12:17. Okay, there is no mention of the sand on the sea in the NIV. The dragon took his stand on the shore beside the sea in the NLT. ESV had he stood on the sand of the sea. Berean Standard, the dragon stood on the shore of the sea. Berean Literal, he stood upon the sand of the sea. So why did the NIV not have it? Oh no, the NIV left something out. Hold on, wait. The King James doesn't have that either. Which keep the commandments of God, have the testament, no sand. The New King James, no sand. New American, no sand. One that we use regularly, Amplified, no sand. Another one we use regularly is Good News. And the dragon stood on the seashore. So this one has the sand. What's the deal? Why is the Bible? Suddenly we found something in the Bible that's wrong. Some translations have the sand and the dragon standing on the sand. Some don't. Hold on. That was 12:17, the last verse in chapter 12. The first verse in the next chapter, which is 13, if you know how to count. And the dragon stood on the shore of the sea. Oh, that's where it is. The NIV didn't leave it out. We could relax. All those people who hate on the NIV because they're married to the King James Version as if that's their boyfriend, that, they want to live forever and ever too. The dragon stood on the shore. It's of course not going to be in the New Living or the ESV because they mentioned the dragon standing on the seashore before. But wait, there's more. King James said, "And I stood on the sand of the sea." New King James said the same thing. New American said, "The dragon stood on the sand of the seashore." And then it says, "Then I saw a beast coming out of the sea." What was the other one? Amplified. Where's the Amplified? All right, Amplified. "And the dragon stood on the sandy seashore." Good news. I saw a beast coming up out of the sea. So this one doesn't mention the sand here because it was in the 12:17. So I'm pointing out something to you here. Let me sum it up. We've observed that Revelation 12:17 in some translations mention the dragon standing on the sea, on the shore of the sea, and some translations in the very next chapter mentioning the dragon standing on the sea, sand of the sea. Yet again, some translations have "I stood on the sand of the sea," not the dragon. So what's happening here? The two verses, Revelation 12:17 and Revelation 13:1, would be the source for a great deal of questions. In the ESV, we noticed, I showed you the footnote where some manuscripts said "I," meaning John. Now, regardless of who was standing at that time, in Revelation chapter 13, there is a beast rising out of the sea, and somebody is standing on the sand of the shore to watch it. Now, when we did this in May, I wasn't sure what was going on, and I went back later that year in August. I went back to check it out, and the interlinear said the verb used for it was aorist, indicative, passive. Aorist, Greek text. Indicative means there's an object. And passive, the person is the one that an action is being done to. So when I read it, I don't see any possible way for the sand to stand on the viewer, right? So I see the passivity in watching the beast rise. So the passive here is related to watching the beast rise as the person stands on the shore. How I read this at that point was the viewer is standing helplessly. So while the viewer is seeing this beast come out, the grammatical use of the Greek, I'm not like a PhD in Greek studies, but based on what we see with some semblance of sense, the viewer is helpless as the overwhelming beast is being revealed. This beast is coming out and the viewer can't do anything about it. Now, if we study the timing, the chapter flows according to time, chapter 12. It flows to some degree according to time, except for that verse 6 bounced forward, and then verse 7 bounced back to where it was. So Satan or John will be standing on the sand after Israel is pursued and escapes as the beast out of the sea surfaces. So check it out. In chapter 12, this is 12, right? So if it's flowing according to time, and the dragon became furious with the woman and went off to make war against her and so on. And he stood on the sand of the sea. And what comes next is Revelation 13. Let me bring Revelation 13 here. And I should have kept this as the same translation as the previous one, which is ESV. Oh, great. This internet is taking forever to do stuff tonight. Well, I hope that this recording is happening properly, right? So if we look at it, it's going to happen after Israel is pursued. Now, Matthew 24 confirms some of this in that it confirms the Great Tribulation will be when Israel is told to flee. Jesus said, flee. So the angelic war in heaven that sends Satan down in rage is likely to take place just before the Great Tribulation. It won't be before the 3.5 years, the first 3.5 years, because Israel at that time will not be fleeing from Jerusalem. Israel will be in Jerusalem, maybe in some conflict, but holding a fragile peace for the 7-year peace treaty. In fact, Israel might be celebrating because their temple will finally be built. And they might be celebrating the temple, the freedom to practice their religion, and the 7-year peace treaty, which guarantees them that no hostile nations will be attacking them. And they'll be celebrating this most likely with their good buddy, the Antichrist, because he's the one who will organize that whole scenario until that stops. That'll stop when he walks into their temple, desecrates the temple, and declares himself to be God. Now, whether it's Satan or John who will be standing on the sand, it may not be too far-fetched to think that the sand of the seashore will be the inhabitants of Israel. Hold on. I say this because Genesis 22:17, if I can bring that up, this is so not switching. Revelation 13 is what I wanted here. Let's check Genesis 22:17. It states, God will surely bless Abraham and multiply his descendants to be as numerous as the stars in the sky and the sand on the seashore. All right. I'm not reading I don't know if that's a direct quote because I just don't want to have to click one of these things and end up, it taken forever. Here it goes. I will certainly bless you. I'll multiply your descendants beyond number, like the stars in the sky and the sand on the seashore. Your descendants will conquer the cities of their enemies. Now, somebody will say, well, he called Israel the stars and the sand. It was a comparison of the two. Hold on. Genesis 32:12. Let's go to Genesis 32:12. Genesis 32:12. And this time I'll new tab it, right? Genesis 32:12 is taking forever to show up. We have a little something on the side here, don't we? Right, Genesis 32:12. But you said, I will show, it doesn't show the whole thing here. 32:12. But you've said, I will surely make you prosper and will make your descendants like the sand of the sea. That's the second time Israel's descendants, Abraham's descendants, is called the sand of the sea. In this whole chapter, let's see who God is talking to. And again, my internet is moving super slow. Right? We're looking here at 32:12. Where's 12? Sorry. Right. But you have said, I'll surely make you prosper. And who is saying this? Jacob is saying this. O God of my father Abraham. That's his granddaddy, by the way. And Jacob is reminding God of his promise. Now, please, y'all don't ever think that we need to remind God of stuff. God ain't forgetful, just saying that. But we can pray and quote God. It's good to quote the Bible when you pray. Hosea, I learned the pronunciation correctly. It's Hosea 1:10. That's 2 references so far. 2 references. Hosea 1. Verse 10. Yet the number of the children of Israel shall be as the sand of the sea, which cannot be measured or numbered. So the first reference I showed you, this is a story of Hosea, by the way, which is an interesting story if you check it out. But the first instance, God referred to multiplying Israel like stars and sand. And then the next two were just sand, which is my indication as to whoever is standing on the sand of the sea, it represents somebody standing on Israel. This is me drawing conclusions. It's not perfectly clear to all of us. Okay. There are other places in the word that may describe Israel as sand on the seashore as well. Revelation 20 verse 8 disagrees with it, because Revelation 20 verse 8 describes the army of the released Satan at the end of the millennial kingdom. And if you check it, let me get to Revelation 20. Is it moving? Yeah, it'll move. We're going to Revelation chapter 20, verse 8. When the 1,000 years are over, Satan will be released from his prison, and he'll go out to deceive the nations in the four corners of the earth, Gog and Magog, and to gather them for battle. In number, they are like the sand on the seashore. So this here is a description of the people against God as the sand on the seashore. But now when we consider, given that Revelation 20 describes after Jesus returns, and all the other references are for Israel, I'm suggesting that the sand in Revelation 12:17 in most translations, which say Satan is standing on it, or the sand in chapter 13, verse 1, and some other translations that say Satan is standing on them, or John is standing on them, that sand is likely the nation of Israel, the literal land and people. If this is right, the sea beast is likely to rise in literal geographical Mediterranean Sea. The BibleRef.com suggested that. John Gill, the commentator, mentioned the sand to be a multitude of people, which makes sense. He pointed out Isaiah chapter 17, verses 12 and 13, which says, I'll just read it. Ah, the thunder of many peoples. They thunder like the thundering of the sea. Ah, the roar of nations. They roar like the roaring of mighty waters. The nations roar like the roaring of many waters, but he will rebuke them, and they will flee far away, chased like chaff on the mountains before the wind, and whirling dust before the storm. John Gill points out Ezekiel 26:3. Therefore, thus says the Lord God, behold, I'm against you, O Tyre. I will bring up many nations against you as the sea brings up its waves. He points out those to show us that the nations are the seas. The nations of the world are the seas. The nations roar like the roaring of many waters. And I'll bring up many nations against you, Tyre, as the sea brings up its waves. We know from Revelation 17:15 that the many waters are the peoples. We've seen that already. Extra proof from the scriptures here came as John Gill shared too. John Gill also mentioned that many Jewish writers say that Israel is compared to the sand. So to summarize this, assuming that the devil is the one standing on the sand as most translations have it, Israel, the land, will see the beast rise out of the Mediterranean Sea, and the devil will be there to watch his monster. This means the beast is not revealed until that point. The beast will be in the waters, which is remember, we identified the turbulent waters the beast is in as nations and peoples and languages, which is the whole world. The beast is in society right now, people. The beast is in society. And the waters are churning because of the tumult in society. And the beast is hiding in it. And that beast is going to rise. And the devil is going to be standing in Israel watching when the beast rises. And I saw a beast rising out of the sea with 10 horns, 7 heads, 10 crowns on his horns, and blasphemous names on its heads. This is going to be subtly hiding in society. Not so subtle for some people of God, I'll be honest with you. It's not that they'll see the whole beast, but they'll recognize the signs, the evidence of the beast. We will recognize evidence of the beast. Now, here's a nice thing. Chapter 13 describes these two beasts. The first beast, which is the beast system and the Antichrist, talking about the Antichrist. Okay, just in case you're wondering, the beast was given a mouth to utter haughty and blasphemous words. It was allowed to make war on the saints and conquer them. That's the organization, but we know that the beast is a person as well. The dragon has given his authority to the beast. People worship the beast, and the one who will promote this is the second beast, the false prophet. This false prophet is going to perform great signs, making fire come down from heaven in front of people. It'll give breath to the image, the abomination that causes desolation. It'll cause everyone to be marked on the right hand. So this second beast is going to be some kind of prophet in those times. By prophet here, I don't literally mean, when we think prophet, we think a man walking with a staff, wearing a long kind of dress thing with long hair and a long beard. This prophet could be a fancy guy in a suit running technological advancements that will cause people to get the mark of the beast. He's going to be the one to make the earth and its inhabitants worship the first beast, whose mortal wound was healed. This would be the Antichrist, who might appear to die, but not die from violence. He'll survive. Chapter 14, we know, brings up the 144,000. They are the first fruits for God from Israel. And then it brings a message from 3 angels. This is chapter 14 we're bringing up. The Lamb and the 144,000, and then 3 angels bringing a message. The message from the 3 angels is literally 3 things. Fear God, give him glory. Fallen is Babylon the Great, who made all the nations drink the wine and passion of a sexual immorality. This Babylon is going to be turned on by the beast system. And a 3rd angel, if anyone worships the beast, its image, and receives the mark, he will drink the wine of God's wrath, poured full strength into the cup of his anger. Hold on. That is a severe warning, right? Verses 9 all the way through 10. He'll be tormented with fire and sulfur in the presence of the holy angels and in the presence of the Lamb. The smoke of their torment goes up forever. This is a warning for anybody who worships the beast and receives the mark on his forehead or his hand. You see the words there? He's going to drink the wine of God's wrath, poured full strength into the cup of his anger. These words lead us into the next 2 chapters that finish off the 3rd woe and the end of the age of grace. And they lead to the original purpose of this study, the outpouring of God's wrath. These things gave us a focus for God's wrath. The terrible things to come that were mentioned will befall the enemy of God's It was for the people of the enemy of God, those who worship the beast. Here we see a wonderful thing that I could not have planned, that I did not plan. We started a study of the Bowls of Wrath, and in a sense, we went off on a long side quest because we saw woe, woe, woe as we tried to figure out what is this temple? Who are these angels? And as we went and we saw the eagles, it leads us right back to the bowls of wrath. So we did a really good study. I'm stopping here for this lesson, this message. And this was one of the amazing things we observed and we enjoyed. Starting the bowls of wrath meant we had to go to Revelation 16. Okay? And in studying Revelation 16, we read about the temple, 7 angels, 3 woes, and the 7 trumpets. We checked out what the 7 trumpets said, just like a surface view. And then we had to go back to see the angels receive their golden bowls. Then we saw the 3 woes, and we went first woe, second woe. Second woe had 2 witnesses, and another part. We read about the witnesses, studied them a little bit. And then we went to the 3rd woe. The heavens, Satan's place in them, war in heaven, kickstarting the 3.5 years of great tribulation. We looked at the eagles, how the eagle's wings will have to pull Israel away to be nourished for 3.5 years. Jacob's trouble, the last time we looked at Jacob's trouble, and we studied to determine who are the woman's offspring, Israel's offspring, that the devil is going to turn his attention to when he can't get to Israel. And after all that side quest, we are back to the bowls of wrath, and we're going to the first bowl of wrath in our bowl of wrath study number 12 next time. I'm sharing all of this for y'all, for anybody with discernment, to pick up that God's word, if we study God's word, it might seem overwhelming, but when you take it one step at a time and you do it diligently, even if you go off on a side quest, you end up right back where you need to go because God's word is perfect. I personally was very much amazed when I went off on the side quest, and I was like, when am I getting back to the bowls of wrath? I'll have to just stop one of these side quests at some point and come back to it. I didn't stop the side quest. I pursued, and boom, I ended up right back at the bowls of wrath. This is the end of our recap of documented session number 145, which was done May 17th. Today is November the 1st, and we thank you for sharing our recap of the 11th session in the Bowls of Wrath series. And I hope and pray that all of you are blessed by this. We studied how chapter 12 of Revelation has some time traveling. We looked at some inconsistencies that you may not pick up unless you read different translations. And then we made sense of it. And we're glad that God is clear. I hope that everybody is well and that you enjoyed as we studied and we followed through. God willing, we'll be here another time to do session 146. God bless you and keep you. Thank you for sharing your time. Goodbye.